The child's handprints on the frost-covered glass looked like a spirit trying to break through from the other side. Mara Blackwood hadn't slept properly in 19 years, and she wasn't sleeping now, just standing at the window past midnight, watching the willows twist and groan in the October wind. Then the wind stopped, dead stopped, like the world had caught its breath. That's when she saw it. 5 small fingers pressed firm against the outside of the glass, the frost melting in circles around each one. She opened the window. A girl crouched beneath it. Flour sack dress. One shoe gone. Bruises on her thin arms like storm clouds that hadn't finished breaking. She didn't flinch, didn't plead, just looked up at her with eyes she hadn't seen in 19 years. Her dead husband's eyes. Neither of them spoke. The wind started again, but quieter now, almost tender, like it had delivered what it came to deliver. Mara hadn't let anyone cross the threshold in 6 years, but the blood on her lip was still fresh, and the wind had claws. She reached down and lifted her through the window. The girl weighed nothing. Cornhusk and bone-light as sorrow. Mara set her on the floor by the wood stove and she didn't make a sound. Just pulled her knees to her chest and watched her the way a rabbit watches a coyote. Hungry? She shook her head. A lie? Mara knew it the way she knew weather. Something in the air that didn't match the words. She knelt down slow, keeping her hands where the girl could see them. The split on her lip had scabbed and broken open again, probably from the cold. Bruises wrapped her wrists like dark ribbons, finger-shaped, and her barefoot was bleeding from creek stones. She'd run a fair distance. Run hard. I'm not going to hurt you, Mara said. She didn't answer, just kept watching her hands. Mara stood and crossed to the kitchen. Coffee was still warm on the stove. She poured a cup. Too bitter for a child, but it was all she had. When she brought it back, the girl took it with both hands and held it against her chest like it was something sacred. Steam rose between them. Who did this to you? Silence. Where are you from? Her voice came out small but steady, like she'd practiced keeping it level. Don't matter where I'm from. Matters I ain't going back. Mara looked at her a long moment. The fire crackled. Outside the wind had picked up again, throwing fistfuls of sleet against the windows. Fair enough, she said. She found bandages in the cabinet Thomas had organized years ago. Strips of clean cotton, a tin of salve gone hard at the edges, a bottle of iodine that still had its seal. She brought a basin of warm water and knelt in front of the girl. Going to clean that foot. Might sting. The girl nodded once and extended her leg, mechanical like she'd done this before. Like pain was just another task. Mara worked careful, picking out the small stones, dabbing the cuts clean. She didn't flinch, not once. She'd seen grown men twice her age cry over less. This one just sat there, jaw tight, eyes fixed on the middle distance. You got a name? Lily May. Lily May Winters. The name meant nothing to her, but something in the way she said it, like she was testing whether Mara would recognize it, made her look up. That's supposed to mean something to me. Don't know yet. Mara didn't push, just wrapped her foot in clean cotton and tied it off gentle. When she finished, she noticed the girl was shaking, not from cold, but from something held too long. The coffee cup trembled in her grip. A shadow moved in the doorway. Kai Silverwind stood there in his long coat, dark braids catching the firelight. He'd heard the commotion, come up from the bunk house. His deep eyes moved from Mara to the girl and back again. He didn't ask questions, just nodded once. She can stay. And stepped back into the night. Lily May watched him go. Who's that? Kay. He's been with me longer than the mountains. He Indian? Lakota. She considered this. He got kind eyes. Mara almost smiled. Almost. Don't let him hear you say that. He's got a reputation to keep. She gave her a blanket, one of Thomas's, wool with a grey stripe at the edge, and pointed to the settee by the fire. You can sleep there tonight. We'll figure the rest come morning. But she didn't lie down, just sat there rigid. The blanket pulled around her shoulders like armor, staring at the flames. Mara lowered herself into the chair across from her. Her bones ached. Her chest ached worse. A familiar weight she'd learned to carry so long ago, she'd forgotten it was there. Until now. Until this girl with her silence and her bruises sat in her house like a question she didn't know how to answer. Minutes passed. The fire settled. The wind moaned low and mournful through the willows. You live here alone? She asked finally. Just me and Kai and the cattle. And she looked around the room, the high ceilings, the cold piano in the corner, the photographs on the mantel. She couldn't quite see from here. That's a lot of rooms for one woman. Suppose it is. More silence. She pulled the blanket tighter. You got a sadness on you, she said. Not a question, a fact. Delivered plain as weather. I can see it. Sits on your shoulders like snow that won't melt. Mara went still. No one had spoken to her like that in 20 years. No one had seen her in 20 years. Not past the land and the cattle and the money. She was Mara Blackwood, the millionaire rancher, the woman who'd built an empire out of nothing. She was not a woman with sadness on her shoulders. Except she was. And this child, this bruised wisp of a girl who weighed nothing and owned nothing and had appeared at her window like a ghost. She'd seen it in the first hour. I got one, too, she said, quieter now. A sadness. Maybe that's why I found your gate. What gate? Somewhere outside, a coyote called. Another answered. The sounds faded into the dark. She didn't sleep. But for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone in the not sleeping. Morning light made everything look softer. The bruises on her arms, the dust on her piano, the 19 years since anybody had set the table for two. Mara stood at the stove pushing eggs around a cast-iron skillet. And the eggs were burning because she hadn't cooked for anyone but herself in so long she'd forgotten how to pay attention. Coffee boiled black and bitter. Biscuits sat heavy as river stones on a tin plate. She looked at the spread and felt something close to shame. Lily May appeared in the doorway. The wool blanket still wrapped around her shoulders. She'd finger-combed her hair, but it stuck up in the back like straw after a windstorm. The swelling around her eye had gone down some. She looked younger in daylight, smaller. Sit, Mara said, nodding toward the table. She sat, hands in her lap, back straight, waiting. Mara set a plate in front of her. Burnt eggs, 2 biscuits, a cup of coffee she'd weakened with water. She looked at it like she'd laid down gold. Thank you. It ain't much. It's more than I had yesterday. She ate everything. Didn't complain about the char on the eggs or the way the biscuits could break a tooth. Cleaned her plate and then looked at it like she wanted to lick it, but knew better. When she finished, she said, "Thank you again." Then a third time when Mara refilled her coffee. Mara didn't know what to do with gratitude. Made her itch. She grunted and turned back to the stove, scraping the burned bits into the slop bucket. The kitchen door opened and Kai stepped in, bringing cold air and the smell of hay. He hung his hat on the peg, poured himself coffee, and sat down across from Lily May like this was any other morning. Like there wasn't a bruised child at the table who hadn't been there yesterday. "You sleep all right?" he asked her. "Yes, sir. That settee's got a broke spring on the left side. Pokes you if you ain't careful. I found it. Figured you might." Something passed between them. Not quite a smile, but close. Kai had a way of making people feel seen without making them feel watched. Mara had never learned that trick. Lily May's eyes moved around the kitchen, taking inventory. The dried herbs hanging from the ceiling beam, the flour tin with the dented lid, the window over the sink, glass thick and warped with age, and past that, visible through the rippled pane, the locked door at the end of the hall. She didn't ask about it, but Mara saw her notice. After breakfast, Lily May washed her plate without being asked. Mara watched her from the corner of her eye. The way she handled the dish, careful like it might bite her, like she'd been punished before for breaking things. She dried it with a rag and set it back on the shelf in exactly the spot she'd seen her take it from. "You don't got to do that," Mara said. "I don't mind." "Didn't say you minded. Said you don't got to." She turned and looked at her, and for a moment Mara saw something flicker behind her eyes. Confusion maybe, or the beginning of trust. Then it was gone. "Can I help with chores?" she asked. "No. I'm good with animals. I can muck stalls and haul water." I said no. She closed her mouth, nodded once. But an hour later, when Mara came back from checking the north pasture, she found her in the barn with Kai learning how to brush down the horses. She had a curry comb in her small hand and was working it over the flank of Mara's bay mare. And the mare, who'd kicked 2 ranch hands in the past year, stood calm as Sunday. Kai caught her eye and shrugged. She asked. Mara didn't say anything, just watched for a moment, then walked away. By midday, she'd made herself useful in ways she couldn't object to. She gathered eggs from the hen house without being shown where it was. She carried firewood from the pile to the porch, making for trips to Mara's one. She found a broom somewhere and swept the kitchen floor, raising 19 years of dust that made them both cough. "You always work this hard?" Mara asked. "Work keeps trouble away." She didn't ask what kind of trouble. She already knew. They ate dinner in the same silence they'd eaten breakfast. Not uncomfortable, just unfamiliar, like 2 people learning each other's shapes. She chewed slow and thorough. Mara noticed she always left 1 bite on her plate, then ate it last, like she was saving proof that there had been food at all. Afterward, she walked her around the ranch. The cattle pens, the hay barn, the smokehouse, the ice cellar dug into the North Hill. She listened to everything she said, asked questions that made sense. Remembered the answers. When they reached the main pasture, she stopped and stared. "All these yours?" "Every last one." 400 head of cattle spread across the valley, red and brown against the yellowing grass. Mountains rising behind them, already capped with early snow. The sky so big it made a person feel small and free at the same time. "You must be rich as Croesus," she said. Mara almost laughed. "Almost. Don't feel rich." She looked at her sideways, and Mara knew she was filing that away, too. Another piece of the puzzle she was building. The big house with too many rooms. The piano nobody played. The locked door. The woman who had everything and carried sadness like a stone. "You got a cat," she said, pointing. A barn cat had emerged from the shadows, orange and white, 1 ear torn, meanest mouser in the territory. It walked straight to Lily May and wound between her legs, purring. Kai, who'd followed at a distance, shook his head. "That cat don't like nobody. Scratched me 3 times this week." Lily May knelt and scratched behind its torn ear. "Maybe you ain't been polite enough." And Mara, standing there in the afternoon light with her cattle and her land and her silence, felt something shift in her chest. Something small, something warm. She didn't trust it, but she didn't push it away either. That evening, the light went gold and then grey and then gone. Mara lit the lamps, all but one. And Lily May sat by the fire with the orange cat curled in her lap, both of them watching the flames like they held answers. She'd been quiet since supper, thinking quiet, not scared quiet. Mara was learning to tell the difference. Her eyes drifted to the mantel, to the photograph there in its tarnished silver frame. "Who's he?" Mara didn't have to look to know which picture she meant. She felt it like a bruise pressed. "My husband. He's real handsome." She took a long breath, let it out slow. Was. Lily May didn't say sorry. Didn't offer the soft words people usually offered, the ones that meant nothing and cost nothing. She just sat there stroking the cat, letting the silence hold what words couldn't. "He die of sickness?" she asked finally. Mara stopped. The truth was complicated. Thomas had left her first. Left her for her coldness, her silence, her refusal to grieve out loud. He died 3 years later alone in a boarding house in Helena. She hadn't known until a letter came from a stranger. "He passed long time ago." "You got the same eyes," Lily May said. "Sad ones. He's in that picture. Yours right now." A log popped in the fire. Loud, sharp. Lily May flinched. The cat startled from her lap. And just like that, the softness in the room cracked open, and Mara saw what lived underneath. The reflex, the fear, the body that had learned to brace before it learned to breathe. She recovered quick, sat up straight, smoothed her dress, but her hands were shaking. Mara waited a moment. Then, careful as she'd been with her wounded foot, "The one who hurt you. He going to come looking?" She didn't answer, which was answer enough. "Lily May." "He's a reverend," she said, voice flat. "Reverend Grayson. Got papers that say I'm his. Got the sheriff and the church and everybody believing I'm the liar and he's the saint." She looked at Mara then, and her eyes were old. Too old. Nobody believes a child over a man of God. Mara felt something turn in her chest. Something sharp. "I believe you." She blinked once, twice, like she was waiting for her to take it back. She didn't. That night, after she'd fallen asleep on the settee, Mara walked to the window by the front door, the one that faced east toward the road toward town. There was a lamp there. Hadn't been lit in 6 years. Thomas used to keep it burning whenever she was out riding. A signal, a promise. "I'm waiting. Come home." She struck a match, touched it to the wick. The flame caught, small at first, then steady. She didn't know why she did it. Didn't have words for the feeling in her chest. But when she looked back toward the settee, Lily May's eyes were open, watching. She didn't speak, just looked at the lamp, then at her, then closed her eyes again. She slept through the night for the first time in 2 years. On the 3rd day, she asked about the locked door. Mara told her it was storage. First lie she'd told in years that made her feel like a coward. Lily May had accepted the answer with a nod, but her eyes lingered on the brass handle a moment too long. She knew. Children always knew when adults were hiding something. They just learned not to push. That afternoon, while Mara was in the north pasture counting heads, Lily May wandered. She told her to stay close to the house, but the land pulled at her. All that open space, all that sky after years of cramped rooms and locked cellars. She walked past the barn, past the chicken coop, past the small hill where the willows bent together like old women sharing secrets. And then she found the gate. The iron moon gate stood at the main entrance to the ranch. 15 feet of wrought iron shaped into crescents spreading outward from a central disc. It had been beautiful once. Now rust bled down its bars like old tears, and a heavy chain wrapped the posts, padlocked tight. Lily May stood before it, small against the iron. The wind moved her hair. She reached out one hand and touched the cold metal. "Mama said, find the iron moon," she whispered. "Said I'd know it when I saw it." The chain made a sound, low, almost a groan. She looked down. The padlock, rusted, ancient, untouched for years, had slipped its catch. The chain slithered through the bars like a living thing and fell to the frozen ground with a dull clank. The gate swung inward just an inch, just enough to let the wind through. Lily May stepped back, heart pounding. She hadn't pulled it, hadn't touched the lock, but the gate stood open now, and the afternoon light fell through the iron moon like something holy. Mara found her there 20 minutes later. She was sitting on a flat stone near the gate, knees pulled up, watching the iron bars catch the dying light. The chain lay coiled on the ground like a dead snake. What happened here? Her voice came out sharper than she intended. I don't know. She looked up at her and there was no guile in her face. I just touched it and it fell. Mara walked to the gate, picked up the chain. The padlock was intact, not broken, not forced, just open like it had decided to let go. Behind her, Kai's voice came quiet. That chain ain't slipped in 20 years. Mara didn't turn around. Wind. Wasn't no wind. Silence. The three of them stood there, the old rancher, the Lakota man, the bruised girl, looking at a gate that had been locked since grief first taught Mara Blackwood to build walls. I didn't mean to break nothing, Lily May said, small. You didn't break it. Mara crouched down and looped the chain through the bars again, but she didn't padlock it, just wrapped it loose. Go on back to the house. Supper soon. She went. Kai stayed. You going to tell me you believe that was wind? Kai asked. I'm going to tell you I don't want to talk about it. Kai nodded slow. He'd known Mara long enough to know when to leave a wound alone. But before he turned to go, he said, some things that's been locked up too long. They find their own way open. Don't matter if you're ready or not. That night, the stars came out thick and cold. And Mara found herself on the porch with a cup of coffee gone lukewarm in her hands. Lily May appeared beside her, blanket around her shoulders, and sat on the step below without asking permission. They watched the sky in silence. A coyote called somewhere in the dark. Another answered. You ever have children? She asked. The question hit her like a fist. She'd known it was coming. Had felt it circling closer for 3 days, but that didn't make it easier. Once. The word came out dry, scraped. A girl. She died long time ago. Lily May didn't look at her, just kept watching the stars. What was her name? Sophie. That's pretty. Means wisdom. Like knowledge. And Mara didn't ask how she knew that. Didn't trust her voice. My mama died, too, Lily May said. 2 winters back. Consumption took her slow. She pulled the blanket tighter. Before she passed, she told me things about where I come from. About a debt owed. What kind of debt? Didn't say exactly. Just said find the ranch with the iron moon. Said the woman there owes me something she don't even know about. She paused. Said you was a good woman who forgot how to be good. Mara's hands tightened on the cup. The coffee was cold now. Dead cold. Your mama. What was her name? Rose. Rose Winters. But that wasn't her born name. She changed it when she was young. Said she had to. Rose. The name meant nothing to her. But something stirred in the back of her mind. Something Thomas had said once, years ago, in the middle of a fight. You don't know everything about me, Mara. You never cared to ask. She ever mention a man named Thomas? Lily May turned to look at her then, full on. Thomas's eyes in a child's face. That was my grandfather's name, she said. Mama's papa. Never met him. He died before I was born. A pause. How do you know that? The stars wheeled overhead. The coyotes had gone silent. Somewhere in the house, the lamp in the window flickered. Mara couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Thomas had a daughter before her, before Sophie, a daughter he'd never told her about, hidden away, given to relatives, erased from the story of who he was. And that daughter had a daughter. And that daughter was sitting on her porch, wearing her dead husband's eyes, asking about a debt she was only now beginning to understand. Neither of them spoke for a long while. The cold crept in around them, but neither moved to go inside. Finally, Mara set down her cup. "Your mama ever tell you why, Thomas, why your grandfather gave her up? Said he was young, unwed. Said back then a man in that situation didn't have choices if the woman's family wouldn't have him." Lily May pulled at a loose thread on the blanket. Said Thomas cried when he handed her over. Cried so hard he couldn't stand. Mara closed her eyes. She could see it. Thomas had a daughter before her, before Sophie, a daughter he'd never told her about, hidden away, given to relatives, erased from the story of who he was. And that daughter had a daughter. And that daughter was sitting on her porch, wearing her dead husband's eyes, asking about a debt she was only now beginning to understand. Neither of them spoke for a long while. The cold crept in around them, but neither moved to go inside. Finally, Mara set down her cup. "Your mama ever tell you why, Thomas, why your grandfather gave her up? Said he was young, unwed. Said back then a man in that situation didn't have choices if the woman's family wouldn't have him." Lily May pulled at a loose thread on the blanket. Said Thomas cried when he handed her over. Cried so hard he couldn't stand. Mara closed her eyes. She could see it. Thomas young, afraid, doing the only thing his world allowed him to do. Burying a child who wasn't dead. Building a new life on top of that grave. No wonder he'd never told her. No wonder he'd left when Sophie died. He'd already lost one daughter to silence. He couldn't bear to lose another to hers. "I ain't asking for nothing," Lily May said quietly. "Mama said you owed a debt, but I ain't here to collect. She stopped, started again. I just needed somewhere to go. Somewhere he couldn't find me." "You got somewhere," Mara said. "Long as you need it." She looked at her, searching, waiting for the catch, the condition, the price that always came. Mara had nothing else to give her. Just the truth. "I mean it." The days took on a rhythm after that. Lily May helped with chores. Feeding chickens, hauling water, brushing down the horses. She learned to make biscuits that didn't break teeth. She named the barn cat Crumb, and Crumb followed her everywhere like an orange shadow. She hummed while she worked. Hymns mostly. "Amazing Grace. How great thou art." Songs her mama must have taught her. Mara found herself listening for that humming. Found herself looking for her when she wasn't in the room. It scared her how quick the house had filled, how loud the silence would be when she was gone. Because she would be gone. She knew that. Grayson would come, or the law would come, or she'd grow up and leave the way everyone left. That was how it worked. That was how it always worked. But for now, for these few days she was here, and the lamp burned in the window every night, and the gate stayed unchained, and something in Mara Blackwood's chest was thawing, whether she wanted it to or not. On the 5th morning, a rider came. Lily May saw him first from the kitchen window. She went pale as milk and stepped back, hands gripping the counter. Mara walked out to meet him. The man was young, rough-dressed, worked for one of the spreads near town, but his horse had come from the direction of the church. Looking for a runaway, the rider said. Girl about 11, yellow hair, simple dress? Reverend Grayson's ward. Ain't seen nobody, Mara said. The rider looked past her toward the house, toward the window where a small face had been and wasn't anymore. You sure about that, Miss Blackwood? I'm sure. The rider held her gaze a moment too long. Then he touched his hat brim and turned his horse back toward the road. Mara watched him go until he was a speck against the grey sky. The wind picked up, snow clouds massing on the horizon. Something was coming. She could feel it in her bones. The Reverend rode up at noon with the sheriff and a piece of paper that made kindness a crime. Mara saw them coming from the barn. 2 riders, one in black, one wearing a tin star that caught the weak November sun. She set down the bridle she'd been mending and walked out to meet them, positioning herself between the riders and the house. Reverend Marcus Grayson dismounted first. He was soft in the middle, clean-shaved, wearing a black coat brushed free of dust. His hands were pale and smooth, hands that had never roped a steer or dug a post hole. Hands that knew other kinds of work. "Miss Blackwood." Grayson smiled with his mouth. His eyes stayed flat as creek stones. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." "Don't know what you're talking about." Sheriff Daniel Hayes climbed down slower, like his bones ached. He was a decent man, Daniel. They'd shared whiskey more than once. Talked cattle and weather in the slow dying of the frontier. But today, he wouldn't meet Mara's eyes. "Mara." Daniel's voice was tired. "Don't make this hard." "Make what hard?" Grayson reached into his coat and produced a folded paper. He held it out like a hymnal, reverent and sure. "Lily Mae Winters is my legal ward. Her mother signed custody papers before she passed. Witnessed by the church, filed with the county." He let the paper hang in the air between them. "She ran off 5 days ago. Troubled child. Makes up stories. I only want what's best for her." Mara didn't take the paper. What's best for her is staying away from whoever put those bruises on her arms. Grayson's smile didn't falter. "Children fall. They play rough. They hurt themselves and blame others when they're caught in mischief." He tilted his head, all patience and pity. "Surely you understand. A woman of your solitary nature might not recognize the discipline a child requires. I recognize a lie when I hear one. Do you?" Grayson stepped closer. His voice dropped, soft as a knife sliding from a sheath. "Then perhaps you'll recognize this. I have a legal document. I have the sheriff. I have the weight of the church and the county behind me. What do you have, Miss Blackwood?" "A big house, empty rooms, a dead husband, and a dead daughter, and enough money to buy silence but not forgiveness." The words hit like fists. Mara felt her hands curl at her sides. Daniel Hayes stepped between them. "Now hold on, both of you. Mara, is the girl here or not?" Before she could answer, the front door opened. Lily Mae stood on the porch. She'd heard them coming. Must have watched from the window. Her face was white as bone, but she held herself straight, chin up, the way she'd learned to hold herself when bracing for a blow. Grayson's smile widened. "There she is. My wayward lamb." Lily Mae didn't move, didn't speak. But her eyes went to Mara, and in them she saw something she hadn't seen before. Hope, fragile as frost, waiting to be shattered. "She ain't going with you," Mara said. "The law says otherwise." "Then the law is wrong." Daniel Hayes rubbed his face with one hand. He looked older than his years, caught between a legal paper and the certainty in Mara Blackwood's voice. "Mara, I got no choice here. The document's valid, signed and witnessed. Look at her, Daniel. Look at her arms. Look at her face. Children get hurt. That don't prove nothing. Proves enough. Grayson stepped forward and his voice carried now, pitched for an audience, though there was none but the wind. "Miss Blackwood, I understand your attachment. A lonely woman, a vulnerable child, an empty house." He paused, letting the implication settle like ash. Some might wonder what draws a recluse to take in a young girl. Some might ask questions. The accusation hung in the air, poison dressed as concern. "You're twisting this," Mara said, low and dangerous. "Am I?" Grayson glanced toward the house. "What's behind that locked door, Miss Blackwood?" "The one in the hallway. The one you keep shut so tight." Lily May flinched. She'd asked about that door. She'd wondered. "That ain't none of your concern. And a woman with secrets shouldn't throw stones." Grayson spread his hands, the picture of reason. "I'm sure there's an innocent explanation. But the town talks, Miss Blackwood. A millionaire hermit, a runaway girl, a locked room. People draw conclusions." Mara felt the ground shifting beneath her. Everything she'd built to protect herself was being turned into a weapon. The locked door that held Sophie's memory. The solitude that held her grief. The kindness she'd finally dared to show. All of it twisted into something ugly. Kai appeared at the corner of the house. He'd been listening. His face was carved from stillness, but his eyes burned. "That girl's got his eyes," Kai said quietly. "You notice that, Reverend?" Grayson turned, irritation flickering across his composure. "What?" "Thomas Blackwood died 3 years back. That girl's got his eyes exact." Kai walked closer, slow and deliberate. "Might be the law gives you a paper, but blood gives Miss Blackwood a claim you ain't counted on." Lily May looked between them. Confusion and something like hope warring on her face. Mara found her voice. "Thomas had a daughter before we married. He never told me. Gave her up young. Kept it secret his whole life." She met Grayson's eyes. "Lily May's grandfather was my husband. That makes her kin. That makes this my business." Grayson's mask slipped just for a moment. A flash of something cold and calculating beneath the piety. Then it was gone, smoothed away like a wrinkle in cloth. "A convenient claim," he said. "Unprovable. Desperate. I got letters." Mara lied. She didn't. But Grayson didn't know that. Thomas kept letters from his daughter. "I found them after he passed. Names, dates, enough to take to a judge." Grayson's jaw tightened. He looked at Daniel Hayes. Daniel looked at the ground. "This ain't settled," Grayson said finally. "I'll be back tomorrow with a marshal from Helena. A federal man. You can tell your lies to him." He turned to Lily May and his voice went soft and sharp as a razor. "I'll see you soon, child. We have much to discuss about honesty and obedience." Lily May didn't flinch this time. She just stared at him with those old eyes. Grayson mounted his horse. Daniel followed, still not meeting anyone's gaze. They rode back toward the road, toward the iron moon gate standing open in the distance. When they were gone, Lily May walked down from the porch. She stopped in front of Mara. "You lied for me," she said. "I did." "Why?" She looked at her. This child who'd appeared at her window like a ghost, who'd opened a gate that hadn't moved in 20 years, who carried her dead husband's eyes and a debt she was only beginning to understand. "Because some things matter more than the truth," she said. "And you're one of them." Snow began to fall. The first flakes of the season, drifting down soft and silent as absolution. But absolution, Mara knew, was still a long way off. She opened the locked door that night. 19 years of dust rose like a congregation of ghosts. The snow had thickened after Grayson left, falling steady and silent, covering the tracks of horses and men and lies. Lily May had gone quiet, not her usual thinking quiet, but something deeper. Wounded. She'd watched Mara through supper, watched her check the windows twice, watched her not eat a single bite of the stew she'd helped Kai make. After she'd gone to bed on the settee, Mara stood in the hallway. The door was in front of her. The brass handle dull with years. The wood dark oak, same as the day she'd hung it. She'd walked past this door 10,000 times. Touched the handle in the dark like a woman touching a headstone. Never opened it. Never once. Tonight her hand closed around the brass and she turned it. The hinges groaned, a sound like something waking after long sleep. The door swung inward, and the smell hit her first. Dust and cedar and something faint beneath. Something that might have been lavender once. Might have been the soap Thomas used to wash Sophie's hair. She stepped inside. The room was small, smaller than she remembered. A child's room with a child's bed against the wall. White iron frame, white quilt yellowed with age. A window faced east, curtains drawn, fabric gone thin as old skin. A wooden chair sat in the corner where Thomas used to sit and read stories aloud. A shelf held 3 books, their spines cracked. Mother Goose, Grimm's Fairy Tales, The Velveteen Rabbit. And on the pillow, exactly where Sophie had left it 19 years ago, a porcelain doll. Con silk hair, blue glass eyes, a painted smile that hadn't faded. Thomas had bought it for Sophie's 2nd birthday. Sophie had named it Daisy and carried it everywhere. To the barn, to the creek, to church on Sundays, tucked under her arm like a secret. Mara walked to the bed. Her boots left prints in the dust, the first prints in 19 years. She reached down and picked up the doll. It weighed nothing, just cloth and porcelain and paint. But holding it, she felt the full weight of every day she'd refused to enter this room. Every night she'd touched the handle and turned away. Every year she'd let the dust settle thicker, as if burying the room could bury the grief. It hadn't. The grief was here, waiting, patient as stone. She sat down on the edge of the bed. The springs creaked. The quilt smelled of cedar and thyme. She held the doll against her chest and she didn't cry. Hadn't cried in 19 years. Had forgotten how. But something cracked inside her. Something that had been held too tight for too long. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Sophie, I'm so sorry." The words fell into the dust and disappeared. She didn't hear her come in. Lily May stood in the doorway, lamplight from the hall spilling around her small frame. She was wearing one of Mara's old shirts as a nightgown, the hem dragging on the floor. Her feet were bare, her eyes were wide. She looked at the room, at the small bed, at the doll in her hands, at the woman sitting there like something hollowed out. This was hers, Lily May said. Not a question. Mara nodded, couldn't speak. Lily May crossed the threshold. Her feet left smaller prints beside hers in the dust. She walked to the bed and sat down next to her. Not close, but close enough. Her hands folded in her lap. She was real pretty, wasn't she? Lily May said, looking at the doll. Daisy, I mean. That's what you called her. Sophie called her that. I don't know how you. It's stitched on her dress. See? Little letters. She was right. Mara had never noticed. All these years and she'd never looked close enough to see. Lily May reached out and touched the doll's hair. gentle as a blessing. My mama had a doll once. Lost it when she was young. She used to talk about it sometimes, late at night. Said it was the only thing she had from before. She paused. Before she got given away. The connection hit Mara like a physical blow. Thomas's daughter, Lily May's mother, had been given away as an infant with nothing but the clothes on her back. No doll, no keepsake, no proof she'd ever been wanted. And here was Sophie's doll, preserved like a saint's relic in a room kept holy for 19 years. All this love locked away. All this grief hoarded like gold. What was she like? Lily May asked. Sophie, I mean. What was she like? The question opened something in her. Something she'd kept sealed so long she'd forgotten it was there. Her voice broke. She tried again. She was springtime. That's what Thomas used to say. Said Sophie came into the world like springtime comes to the valley. All at once, changing everything. That's pretty. It was true. Lily May was quiet for a moment. Then, how'd she die? The question she'd never answered. The question she'd spent 19 years running from. Fever, Mara said. Scarlet fever. Took her in 3 days. She stared at the doll's painted smile. I wasn't here. I was in Billings closing a cattle deal. Thomas sent word she was sick, but I told myself she'd pull through. She was strong. She was always strong. But she didn't. No. She didn't. The snow fell harder outside the window, a white silence pressing against the glass. I came back 2 days later, Mara said. She was already buried. Thomas had done it alone. Dug the grave himself because I wasn't there to dig it. Lily May didn't say anything, just sat there small and still, letting her speak. She called for me. Sophie did, at the end. She kept asking for her mama. Her hands tightened on the doll. And I was 60 miles away, shaking hands on a deal I can't even remember now. Counting cattle while my daughter died calling my name. The words hung in the air, terrible and true. Lily May reached over and put her hand on her arm. Her fingers were small and cold. That ain't your fault, she said quietly. Something snapped. Don't. Mara pulled away, standing up fast. The doll fell to the bed. Don't tell me what's my fault and what ain't. You don't know. You weren't there. Lily May flinched but didn't move from the bed. Why didn't you tell me sooner? The words came out harsh, jagged. About Thomas? About your mama? About this debt you keep talking about? Why'd you show up at my window like some kind of ghost and turn everything inside out? I didn't know. You knew something. Your mama told you to find me. Told you I owed her. But she didn't tell you what, did she? Just sent you here to collect on a debt I didn't even know existed. Lily May's face had gone pale, her hands twisted in her lap. I just needed somewhere safe, she whispered. I didn't mean to. Safe, Mara laughed, a terrible sound. More like breaking than mirth. There ain't no safe. Don't you understand that? Grayson is coming back with a federal marshal. He's got the law, the church, the whole damn territory behind him. And I got nothing but a lie about letters that don't exist. Then I'll go. Lily May stood, her voice small but steady. I'll leave tonight. He won't bother you if I'm gone. I'll. That ain't, I didn't mean. But she was already moving, already backing toward the door. Her face closed off the way it had been that first night. waiting for the blow, expecting the betrayal. Lily May, wait. She stopped in the doorway, turned, and her eyes, Thomas's eyes, were full of something worse than fear. Full of hope dying. I ain't your kin, she said. You said so yourself. I ain't nothing to you. She hadn't said that, had she? The words jumbled in her head, tangled with anger and grief and 19 years of locked doors. I ain't her, Lily May said. I ain't Sophie. I know you wish I was, but I ain't. And I can't pay a debt I don't understand for people who are dead and gone. She turned and walked out of the room, out of the hallway, out of the house. The front door opened. Cold air rushed in. Then the door closed and she was gone. Into the snow, into the night, into the dark that had been waiting all along. Mara stood in the empty room. The doll lay where it had fallen on the white quilt, its glass eyes staring at the ceiling. Outside, the snow swallowed everything. Sound, sight, the small footprints of a girl running into the dark. She'd done it again. Driven someone away with her silence, her walls, her refusal to feel anything that might crack her open. Thomas had left the same way, not in anger, but in exhaustion. In the slow death of hoping she would break and finding only stone. The door opened behind her. Kai stood there, snow melting on his shoulders. His face was carved from something older than grief. She's gone, Mara said. I sent her out into. I know. I saw. We have to find her. Grayson's men could be. I'll find her. Kai didn't move. But first, you're going to listen. Because there's something you should have known a long time ago, and I ain't carrying it no more. Mara turned. Something in Kai's voice stopped her cold. Thomas told me things, Kai said. Before he left. Things he couldn't tell you because you wouldn't hear them. Kai. He didn't leave because Sophie died. The words fell like stones into still water. He left because you didn't. You turned to rock. Wouldn't cry. Wouldn't speak the child's name. Locked that door and locked yourself behind it and expected Thomas to grieve alone same as he'd buried Sophie alone. The room tilted. Mara put a hand against the wall. He waited 2 years for you to break, Kai continued. Waited for you to hold him and weep with him and be human with him. But you just kept building. More cattle, more land, more walls. He paused. He told me he still loved you the day he rode off. Said he'd come back if you ever learned to feel again. He never came back. No. He died 3 years ago alone in a boarding house in Helena. Kai's voice softened. I got the letter. Didn't tell you because he asked me not to. Said if you hadn't come by then, you weren't coming. Mara's legs gave out. She sank to the floor, back against the wall, hands hanging useless at her sides. The weight of it crushed her. Not Sophie's death, but everything after. The silence she'd chosen. The love she'd refused. The husband who died waiting for her to remember how to be human. That girl didn't come to collect a debt, Kai said. She came to pay one. She came to give you a second chance. And you just sent her into a snowstorm because you're still too scared to let anyone in. I don't deserve. That's what makes it grace. Kai crouched down, meeting her eyes. It ain't about deserving. It never was. He stood, walked to the door, turned back one last time. I'm going to find her. You're going to sit here and decide what kind of woman you want to die as. His voice was steady and merciless. Because that choice is coming, Mara, sooner than you think. He left. The door stayed open behind him. Mara sat on the floor of her daughter's room, surrounded by 19 years of dust, and wept for the first time since they put Sophie in the ground. Snow fell all night. By morning, every sin was covered, but nothing was forgiven. Mara stood on the porch before dawn, watching the world turn white. The storm had gentled sometime in the small hours, shifting from fury to patience, and now the flakes came down soft and steady as breath. The willows were ghosts. The barn was a grey shape in the distance. The iron moon gate stood open at the end of the drive, half buried, waiting. Kai had ridden out hours ago, hadn't come back. The silence where his report should have been was its own kind of answer. Mara went to the barn and saddled her horse. The bay mare, the one Lily May had brushed that first full day, the one who'd stood calm beneath her small hands. The leather was cold, her fingers were clumsy. She hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, hadn't done anything but sit on the floor of Sophie's room until the weeping stopped and something harder took its place. She mounted up and rode out into the white. The snow had erased everything. No tracks, no trails. The world was a blank page, and somewhere on it, a girl was written in invisible ink. Lost, alone, running from a woman who'd promised her safety and then proved herself a liar. Mara rode past the gate. The chain lay buried now, a dark shape beneath the white. She didn't stop to dig it out. Didn't stop for anything. The road toward town was empty. No riders, no wagons, no sign that anyone else existed in this frozen world. The mountains rose in the distance, their peaks lost in cloud, and the valley stretched out below like a held breath. She didn't go to town. Not yet. There was somewhere else she needed to be first. The hilltop cemetery sat a quarter-mile east of the house on a rise where you could see the whole ranch spread out below. Thomas had chosen the spot. Said he wanted Sophie to be able to watch the sunrise, to see the cattle moving in the spring, to know she was still part of the land even after the land had taken her. Mara hadn't been up here in 3 years, hadn't been able to make herself climb the hill, face the stone, speak to the silence that never answered back. Today she climbed. The grave was half buried in snow. The stone was simple. Grey granite, hand-carved letters already softening with weather and time. Sophie Rose Blackwood, 1874 to 1880. She was springtime. Mara dismounted, stood there. The wind had died and the silence was so complete she could hear her own heartbeat. Could hear the snow settling on her shoulders and hat. She knelt. The cold came through her trousers immediately, biting at her knees, but she didn't move. Just knelt there in the snow before her daughter's grave. A woman made of stone, finally learning to crack. "I don't know how to do this," she said. Her voice sounded strange in the silence. Too loud, too human. "I never knew. Your papa tried to teach me, but I was too proud, too scared." The stone said nothing. The snow kept falling. "I thought if I didn't feel it, it couldn't hurt me. Built walls so high I couldn't see over them. Locked doors so tight I forgot what was behind them." She looked at the carved letters of her name. "But you were always there. Behind every wall, behind every door, waiting for me to be brave enough to remember." A crow called somewhere in the distance. The only other living sound in the world. "There's a girl," Mara said. "Name's Lily May. She showed up at my window a few days ago, half frozen, beat half to death. She's got your papa's eyes. Got your grandfather's blood in her veins, though I didn't know it at first." She paused. "I think maybe your papa sent her. Or maybe God did. Or maybe grace just works that way. Shows up when you least expect it, wearing a face you almost recognize." And she thought about Lily May's voice in the dark. "You got a sadness on you, I can see it. She thought about her hand on her arm in Sophie's room. That ain't your fault. She thought about the way she'd looked at her before she ran. Hope dying in her eyes, waiting for the blow that always came. I hurt her, she said. Same way I hurt your papa. Same way I hurt everyone who ever tried to get close. Pushed her away because I was scared. Because feeling something for her felt like betraying you. The wind stirred. Snow swirled around the headstone like something restless. But it ain't betrayal, is it? Mara's voice cracked. Loving someone new don't mean loving you less. It means, she stopped, tried again. It means proving that love was real, that it taught me something, that it made me better instead of worse. She reached out and brushed the snow from the top of the stone. The granite was cold as bone beneath her fingers. I'm going to find her, she said. Lily May. I'm going to bring her home and keep her safe and be the woman I should have been for you, for your papa. She stood, knees aching, heart aching worse. I don't know if I can fix what I broke, but I'm going to try. That's all I got left. The trying. She looked down at the grave one last time. The snow was already filling in the letters of her name, softening them, covering them. I love you, Sophie. I never stopped. I just forgot how to say it. The wind picked up. The snow thickened. And somewhere beneath the white silence, Mara thought she heard something. A sound like laughter, like a child running through spring grass, like forgiveness made audible. She mounted her horse and turned toward town. The ride down the hill felt different than the ride up. The weight was still there, would always be there, but it had shifted somehow, settled, become something she could carry instead of something that carried her. Lily May was out there, lost in the snow or found by Kai or taken by Grayson. She didn't know which. Didn't matter. She was going to find her either way, because Kai was right. This wasn't about debt or blood or legal papers. This was about grace, unearned, undeserved, given freely to those who didn't know how to ask. Lily May had come to give her a second chance. And she'd almost thrown it away because she was too scared to take it. Not anymore. She spurred the mare forward, and the snow parted before her like a curtain, like a door swinging open, like a world that had been waiting 19 years for her to finally walk through. She rode into town with no gun, no badge, and no law on her side, just her word and a debt 19 years overdue. Dry Creek lay quiet under the snow. Smoke rose from chimneys in thin grey columns. A dog barked somewhere and was silenced. The street was empty except for a buckboard outside the general store and two horses tied in front of the church, one black, one grey, both well-fed and expensive. Grayson's horses. Mara dismounted in front of the livery and handed her reins to the boy who came running. The boy looked at her with wide eyes. Everybody in town knew Mara Blackwood, knew her money and her solitude, and the rumors that clung to both like burrs. Miss Blackwood, there's been. I know. Mara didn't slow down. Where is she? The church. Reverend Grayson brought her in this morning. Said she was wandering on the road, half froze. Said. But Mara was already walking. The First Methodist Church of Dry Creek was a white clapboard building with a bell tower that had gone silent 3 winters ago, when the rope frayed and nobody bothered to fix it. Mara had helped build it. Back when she still believed in building things, back when Thomas still sang in the choir and Sophie still squirmed in the pew beside her, too young to understand the sermons, but old enough to know that Sunday meant her mother would sit still for 1 whole hour. She climbed the steps. The doors were heavy oak, iron-banded, built to last. She pushed them open and walked inside. The sanctuary stretched before her, rows of wooden pews. A center aisle worn smooth by decades of boots and grief. An altar at the far end with a plain wooden cross hanging behind it. Morning light came through the windows, gray and cold, falling in pale rectangles on the floor. And there, in the front pew, sat Lily May. She was wrapped in a wool blanket, her hair damp, her face pale as candle wax. Beside her sat Reverend Grayson, one soft hand resting on her shoulder like a brand of ownership. A man in a federal marshal's coat stood near the altar, arms crossed, watching. The congregation was there, too. A dozen townspeople scattered through the pews. Widow Preston from the general store. Doc Miller with his red-veined nose. The Andersons from the feed lot. Others Mara knew by face, if not by name. Sunday service wasn't for another hour, but word had spread. They'd come to watch. Grayson looked up as Mara entered. His smile spread slow and satisfied. "Miss Blackwood, how good of you to join us." Mara walked down the center aisle. Her boots echoed on the wooden floor. She didn't look at the congregation, didn't look at the marshal, didn't look at anything but Lily May's face. She saw her coming. Her eyes went wide. Fear first, then confusion, then something fragile and desperate that made her chest ache. Mara stopped at the front pew, looked down at her. "You all right?" She nodded, didn't speak. Grayson's hand tightened on her shoulder. "The child is fine," Grayson said smoothly. "Frightened, cold, but safe now, thanks to God's providence." He stood, positioning himself between Mara and Lily May. She was found wandering the North Road this morning, nearly frozen. One wonders what could have driven her out into such a storm. "I drove her out." Mara's voice was flat. "I said things I shouldn't have. Hurt her when I should have protected her." A murmur rippled through the congregation. Grayson's smile flickered. "A confession," the Reverend said. "How unexpected." "Ain't a confession. It's the truth. There's a difference, though I don't expect you'd know it." The marshal stepped forward. He was a hard-looking man, trail-weathered, with eyes that had seen too much to be easily fooled. "Miss Blackwood, I'm Marshal Brooks out of Helena. I've got legal papers here that say this girl is Reverend Grayson's ward. You got anything that says different?" "I got her word." "The word of a child." "The word of a child who ran 15 miles in the dark to get away from a man who beats her." Mara turned to face the congregation. "Look at her arms. Go on, look. You'll see the bruises, finger-shaped, the kind you get when someone grabs you hard enough to leave marks." I shifted. Grayson's face tightened. "The child is clumsy. She falls. She flinches every time someone raises a hand near her. Even to wave. Even to scratch their own head." Mara's voice rose, filling the sanctuary. "That ain't clumsiness. That's what happens to a child who's learned that hands mean pain." Doc Miller stood up slowly in his pew. His face was troubled. "I've treated that girl before," he said. 2 broken ribs last spring. She said she fell off a horse." He paused, swallowed. I didn't believe it then. Didn't say nothing because he looked at Grayson. Because I owed money to the church fund. Because I was a coward. The murmur grew louder. Widow Preston was staring at Grayson with new eyes. The Andersons whispered to each other. Grayson's mask cracked just for a moment. Something ugly flashed beneath. Cold and calculating and cruel. "This is slander," he said, voice rising. "Lies from a bitter hermit and a town drunk. The child is mine by law, by right, by the grace of God. God ain't got nothing to do with what you done. Mara stepped closer and her voice dropped low. Low enough that only Grayson and Lily Mae could hear. I've seen men like you before. Men who use scripture like a whip. Men who pray loud so nobody hears the screaming. Grayson's eyes narrowed. You have no proof, no standing. I have blood. The words landed like a stone in still water. Mara turned to the marshal. Lily Mae's grandfather was Thomas Blackwood, my husband. Thomas had a daughter before we married. Gave her up, kept it secret. That daughter was Lily Mae's mother. She took a breath. That makes Lily Mae my husband's granddaughter, my kin by marriage, and I'm claiming her. The marshal frowned. You got proof of that? I got letters. The lie again, but it didn't feel like a lie anymore. It felt like a promise. And I got something else. Something that don't need paper to prove. She reached into her coat and pulled out a folded document. Not letters, something else. Something she'd grabbed from her desk before riding out, not knowing why, only knowing it mattered. The deed to the Millbrook parcel. 2,000 acres of prime grazing land, worth more than most men would see in 10 lifetimes. I'm signing this over, Mara said. To the town, to the church, whatever you want. In exchange for Lily Mae's custody, legal and binding. The sanctuary went silent. Even the wind outside seemed to hold its breath. Marshal Brooks took the deed, unfolded it, read it slow, lips moving slightly. When he looked up, his eyes had changed. Harder, wearier, reassessing everything. 2,000 acres, he said. That's a lot of land for a girl who ain't even blood. She's blood enough. Mara didn't look away. And land's just dirt. She's more than dirt. Grayson stepped forward, face flushed. This is absurd. You can't buy a child. The law doesn't work that way. The law works however men with power decide it works. Mara turned to face him fully. You taught me that, Reverend. When you used your church and your papers and your clean hands to beat a little girl and call it salvation. I never? Lily Mae. She looked up at her. Those eyes, Thomas's eyes, Sophie's almost eyes, steady now, waiting. Tell them, Mara said. Tell them the truth. Whatever happens after, I'll stand by you. But they need to hear it from your mouth. She stood. The blanket fell from her shoulders. She was so small standing there in the front of the church. But her voice came out clear as spring water. He locks me in the cellar when I sin, she said. Sometimes for days. He uses his belt when I talk back. He broke my ribs when I tried to run the first time. She looked at Grayson and there was no fear left in her face. Only truth. He prays real loud while he does it. Says he's saving my soul. The congregation erupted. Widow Preston rose to her feet. The Andersons were shouting. Doc Miller had his head in his hands. Marshal Brooks folded the deed and tucked it inside his coat. Then he walked to Grayson and took him by the arm. Reverend, I think you and I need to have a conversation down at the jail. This is outrageous. I am a man of God. God ain't the one pressing charges. The marshal's grip tightened. The territory of Montana is. He led Grayson toward the door. The Reverend twisted, looking back at Lily Mae with something venomous in his eyes. You'll regret this, he hissed. Both of you. God sees everything. Lily Mae didn't flinch. So do I. The doors closed behind them. The sanctuary fell quiet again, but a different kind of quiet. The quiet after a storm passes. The quiet of something ending and something else beginning. Lily May stood alone in the aisle. She looked up at Mara and her voice came out small. "You gave away your land for me." "I gave away dirt." She knelt down so their eyes were level. "You ain't dirt, Lily May. You ain't a debt or a burden or a ghost. You're a child who deserved better than what the world gave you." She swallowed. "And I'm sorry I made you think even for a minute that you wasn't wanted." Her chin trembled. "You mean it?" "I mean it." She crashed into her, arms around her neck, face pressed against her shoulder, shaking with sobs she'd held in for God knows how long. Mara wrapped her arms around her and held on. Held on the way she should have held Sophie. The way she should have held Thomas. The way she'd been too scared to hold anyone for 19 years. The congregation watched in silence. Some of them were crying, too. And outside, the snow had stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds, falling through the church windows in long golden beams, lighting up the dust motes like something holy. The snow had stopped by the time they reached the gate. Lily May was the one who walked through first. The ride home had been quiet, the good kind of quiet, the kind that doesn't need filling. Lily May sat in front of Mara on the bay mare, wrapped in her coat, her head leaning back against her chest. She'd fallen asleep somewhere around the creek crossing, exhaustion finally claiming what fear had held at bay. Kai met them at the barn. He took the mare's reins without a word, but his eyes said everything. Relief, approval, something that might have been pride. He nodded once at Mara. Mara nodded back. Some things didn't need language. She carried Lily May inside and laid her on the settee, pulling Thomas's wool blanket up to her chin. She stirred but didn't wake, just burrowed deeper into the warmth, a small sound escaping her lips that might have been contentment. Mara stood there, watching her breathe. In and out, the rhythm of something alive and safe and home. Then she walked back outside. The iron moon gate stood open at the end of the drive, half buried in fresh snow. The chain lay where it had fallen days ago, rusted, ancient, no longer needed. Mara waded through the drifts until she reached it. She picked up the chain, held it in her hands, felt the weight of it. All those years of keeping the world out, keeping herself in, building walls against a grief that had only grown stronger in the dark. She walked to the barn and hung the chain on a nail beside the horse tack. Then she walked back to the gate. The iron moon caught the last light of afternoon, golden now, almost warm, the rust looking less like decay and more like age, like something that had earned its years. She didn't close it. Didn't even touch it. Just left it standing open. That evening, the fire burned low, and the stars came out thick and cold. Lily May woke to the smell of coffee and biscuits. Kai's biscuits this time, which meant they were actually edible. She sat up on the settee, blanket clutched around her shoulders, and found Mara in the chair across from her. Same positions as their first night, same fire, same silence, but everything was different. "You came for me," she said. "I did. Even after what I said about not being your kin." She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "You ain't Sophie. I know that. Don't want you to be." She paused, finding the words. "But you're something. Something I didn't know I needed until you showed up at my window, half froze and stubborn as a mule." A small smile tugged at her mouth. "Mama always said I was stubborn." "Your mama was right." Silence again. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind moved soft through the willows, gentle now, carrying nothing but cold air and starlight. Lily May looked toward the window, the one that faced east toward the road toward town. The lamp sat dark on the sill. She pushed off the blanket and crossed the room, found the matches on the ledge, struck one, touched it to the wick. The flame caught, small at first, then steady. Golden light spilled across the glass, pushing back the dark. "What's that for?" Mara asked. She turned to look at her. Thomas's eyes, Sophie's almost smile, something entirely her own. "So you can find your way home," she said. "In case you ever forget." She'd spent 20 years building fences to keep the world out. Turned out all she needed was one small hand reaching through. Outside the gate stood open, the snow glittered under the stars, and somewhere in the house, a child was humming. Amazing Grace, soft and off-key, the most beautiful sound Mara Blackwood had heard in 19 years. She closed her eyes. For the first time since they'd put Sophie in the ground, she didn't dream of what she'd lost.